Lando Norris secures a pole position for the Singapore Grand Prix as Max Verstappen defies the odds to put his RB20 on the front row. However, the big story from qualifying comes in the post-qualifying FIA press conference where Lewis Hamilton defended Max Verstappen and branded his punishment for swearing as a joke. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm delighted to be joined by lead editor Ian Parks. Ian, what a day. Stories up and down the paddock. And very quickly, I mentioned we have hit 10,000 subscribers. So thank you very, very much to everyone who clicked that big red button. Please keep doing so, because once we've hit 15,000, we are doing a massive, massive giveaway, but more on that to come over the coming weeks. Ian, we've got to start not with qualifying, but with the press conference. That happened directly after. And in many ways, the fallout of Max Verstappen's punishment for swearing on Thursday. He's been given effectively community service. Verstappen was very, very clever in the press conference, as I'll let you explain in a second. But more crucially, Lewis Hamilton, we know his past with Verstappen, actually jumped to the defence of the Dutchman.
Quite extraordinary. And I'm delighted to say, Nick, that I'm here to cover what is probably one of the stories of the season, in all fairness, because I don't think anybody could have predicted this, not least the fact that Max Verstappen, first of all, is lining up second on the grid, given his performance on Friday in practice that lent itself to suggest that he was going to be nowhere near the front row, probably not even in Q3, which is what I predict. So as I say, he and Checo, miles off the pace. Both drivers complained that about the car, that it looked like they were not going to get through Q3 again, as was the case last year. So all of a sudden, we have Max Verstappen in the official FIA top 3 press conference. So that's your first point. Then we get into the press conference itself, and who would have thought Max would take it upon himself to conduct himself the way he did, and effectively, I'm going to use the word protest against the punishment levied against him for using the F word during the official FIA drivers press conference on Thursday. He used that F word to basically describe how his car had felt going into qualifying ahead of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, given the changes that had been made to it between FP3 and qualifying itself. So here he was, Tom Clarkson, the usual host that conducts these press conferences for us, and first few questions, and quite clearly you could tell that Max was not in a mood to respond. There was a point at which Max turned around and said that he didn't feel that he wanted to engage too much with Tom. That was no disrespect to Tom, just the nature of the situation. And then when it came to answering questions from the floor, from the assembled written media, again, he was very curt, very perfunctory. And when somebody asked him whether he would answer questions outside, he indicated he would. What then followed was the whole press entourage that was in that press conference room then followed Max outside to an area on the first floor here of the press conference, the media area here just behind me. But Max was urged to move on because there were too many people gathered around him on what was quite a relatively small floor space, particularly as well given the access that's required around that area. So he then decided to conduct his press conference almost a little bit like a walk and talk along the paddock that you can see behind me with the assembled media. He did actually stop at one stage because it was just getting a little bit ridiculous. They were pushing and shoving and people trying to lean in their phones and their dictaphones, etc. Basically, what Max turned around and said when he did get around to answering some questions, that he felt the community service punishment that was levied against him for using that F word was ridiculous, quote unquote. As you've mentioned, Nick, Lewis had already turned around and actually said during the top 3 press conference itself, defending Max, he said it was a joke. And basically what happened is that the letter of the law is effectively being applied with regard to the international sporting code. But for Max, unfortunately, his use of the F word on Thursday came on the exact same day, just a few hours, in fact, after FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem had basically turned around and called for the drivers to be more respectful over the team radio, to stop using swear words, that they were not rappers, that they were removed from those artists, those musical artists, compared to who they are as F1 drivers. That obviously initially angered Lewis Hamilton on the Thursday. That has obviously angered Max Verstappen, in particular the punishment, as I say, given against him. Not a happy bunny. He's taken it upon himself to do his own thing, and pretty much, Nick, he has turned around and agreed with my theory that I mentioned in the F1 update on Friday, that he has been made an example of by the FIA. So at least I got something right on Friday when we were doing our F1 update, because goodness me, my bold predictions were way off the mark, given the turnaround in form on track between Friday and Saturday. But yeah, quite extraordinary scenes and events here in Singapore. Something to behold, something I've not quite seen across the sport in all my time I've been covering it.
It was something quite spectacular. And obviously, as you mentioned, we didn't expect Max to be in that top 3 press conference because of how difficult Friday was for Red Bull. Likewise, we were definitely not expecting Lewis Hamilton to be in there either. We'll get onto Lewis in a second. But let's talk about Max, because his teammate Sergio Perez was really the only big shock not to make Q3. He was eliminated in Q2. Checo will start provisionally in 13th, so his latest qualifying howler. But Max actually, from FP3, looked more comfortable in the car, was nowhere near the pace of Norris, who still claimed pole in qualifying by 0.2 of a second, was actually half a second clear in FP3. Lando has looked on the rails all weekend. But Max said himself in Parc Fermé, when he did briefly speak, that now where he is qualified on the front row, despite all the odds, he has, and his quote-unquote, a shot at victory on Sunday. Nobody thought this would happen. Everybody thought, given Red Bull's recent history here, this is the chance for Lando to maybe take 15, maybe even 20 points out of Max Verstappen's championship lead. In fact, we could see potentially Max maybe extend the lead. We could see him taking the fight to Lando, or maybe Lando only actually taking maybe another 7 or 8 points out of it.
Got the impression, Nick, that Lando Norris now might be a little bit of a nervous driver when it comes to pulling away off that grid on Sunday. Yeah. We know he's had a few iffy starts already this season, and now he knows he's got his main title rival alongside him, somebody that he was surely not expecting, certainly not after what happened at this circuit last year, as I say, when neither Red Bull made it into Q3, and most certainly not after the performance of that RB20 around this Marina Bay Street circuit in the Friday practice sessions. We saw from Checo Perez what we were likely expecting of Red Bull in qualifying overall, given, as I say, what we saw on Friday. Where on earth did that performance come from Max Verstappen? Because something has clearly changed on his car to all of a sudden pull out all the stops like that and get that second place on the grid. Yes, of course, we can attribute some of it to Max, of course. He's a fantastic driver, one of the greatest of his generation right now in this era of Formula One. 3-time champion, could be 4-time at this rate. We still don't know, but given that performance of that car, coming into this circuit where Red Bull has never performed well, really, where Max has never won, as you say, Nick, he now has this shot, as you call it, of extending his lead over Lando Norris in the championship. Speaking to Andrea Stella post-qualifying, he's basically himself conceded that with Max alongside Lando on that front row, that the start of tomorrow's Grand Prix is going to be, quote-unquote, very tense. So if he's going to feel very tense, how on earth is Lando Norris going to feel in the cockpit of that car? One thing Andrea is very certain of, though, that if Lando gets away, if Lando leads that first lap and barring what might unfold behind in terms of incidents, potential safety cars, and as we know, this Grand Prix has pretty much always had a safety car for every year it's been out here.
We said the same about Baku.
Yes, exactly. Andrea is absolutely confident that, as I say, Lando's leading that first lap. He will go on to take the checkered flag because he has seen with that car and its race performance on high fuel runs that it is looking quite exceptional. So they're at least, as I say, it's all on Lando. It's all going to be on Lando. It's about that start, that first lap. But boy, is he going to come under some intense pressure from Max Verstappen alongside him. Not only Max alongside him, he's got Lewis Hamilton directly behind him. Andrea Stella, for one, is hoping that Lewis can get into the mix over those first 2 or 3 corners and give Max a little bit of a run, that's for sure.
I think the underlying message is do not miss the start of the Singapore Grand Prix. And it's funny you mentioned Lewis because he's another driver who was nowhere on Friday, was really not a happy bunny. But somehow Mercedes, even FP3, weren't necessarily fantastic, still had a few things to deal with. But in qualifying, Mercedes, particularly in Lewis's side, obviously Russell is alongside him in P4, but wasn't particularly happy with his tyres. But Lewis, P3, looked brilliant in qualifying. And actually, he even said in Parc Fermé during the Parc Fermé interviews that Max and Lando have a bit of a history with coming together recently. If he just, whilst he hasn't got the pace to compete with Lando, you never know what could happen. It's about being in the right place at the right time. We've seen Lewis do that before, but you'd like to think that he'll now be wanting at least a podium, but potentially with Ferrari, he'll get onto in a second, starting quite far back. Lewis could have a chance of maybe with the right strategy, maybe not beating Lando, potentially getting Max.
He's definitely in the mix. And as you say, quite a turnaround from what we saw on Friday. These two guys, where has this come from?
Let us know in the comments.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's not been too much in the way of explanation, certainly out of Red Bull, as to the turnaround in form from Friday into Saturday. One idea that we might have was that maybe Red Bull has managed to do something with that RB20 with regards to its curb riding. We know it's had considerable difficulty over the course of this season with regard to that. And even Max picked up on it himself as well. When he kept it clean, by the way, during Thursday's press conference, and he didn't use a swear word about his car. That, yes, it has struggled. And he was expecting something similar here because of the curbs. But it looked like potentially Red Bull had managed to stiffen its suspension to a certain extent, and it was able to ride the curbs a little bit more. I know Nico Rosberg in his Sky Sports F1 punditry suggested something similar. So, but why was Checo Perez not able to do the same as Max, at least being Q3? Never mind that far up the grid where Max is, but at least to have got his car into Q3 because he was miles off the pace. But yes, as you say, Nick, Lewis Hamilton definitely in the mix for a podium, and ordinarily this is quite the turnaround for Lewis because he's always been a happy chappy for the most part, talking about how well his car's doing on a Friday. Going into Saturday, he's been on the floor with just, the turnaround of the car and its performance and how bad it's been. Well, all of a sudden, the car wasn't looking good here on Friday, and all of a sudden, he's got a good car for into Saturday, and looking like he's got a good car as well going into Sunday. George Russell, his teammate, went one step further. He said that the Friday for Mercedes was the worst he had experienced in 3 years. So that gives you some idea as to just how bad Mercedes felt its performance was. And then all of a sudden, we had this remarkable turnaround. No real change in conditions. Bit more cloud cover perhaps overnight than compared to last night when we had second practice. Of course, we did have the most torrential downpour that took place about hour and a half or so after practice too. That obviously completely cleaned the track. When I talk downpour, we're talking monsoon conditions here for at least an hour and a half. So that would have wiped all the dust, all the debris, all the rubber off the track, and we had a relatively clean slate on which to start today's practice and qualifying. Did that come into the equation? I'm sure data will unravel things a little bit more when we're able to speak to the likes of Christian post-race on Sunday, for argument's sake, and Toto Wolff as well after the race on Sunday.
Well, at least with the downpour after Friday, there was the return of Poncho Parks. For those who remember what happened during the Chinese Grand Prix, my prediction is that Max and Mercedes were doing a rain dance because something's happened overnight. Very quickly to go through the top 10 on the grid provisionally. Lando Norris is on pole with Max Verstappen alongside him. Hamilton and Russell on the second row. Oscar Piastri in fifth. Nico Hulkenberg in a superb P6, Fernando Alonso in a very good P7 as well, Yuki Tsunoda in an exceptional P8 considering Daniel Ricciardo was booted out in Q1. And that brings us on to Ferrari, Charles Leclerc in P9 after not setting a legal time, and Carlos Sainz in P10 and with a €25,000 fine to his name following a shunt in Q3 which brought out a brief red flag, but it's what Sainz did after the crash, Ian, that's triggered this fine.
Decided to get out of his car and walk across the track, or live track pretty much. And as the stewards put it in their summation document, it is an explicit regulation that you cannot do such a thing. Carlos Sainz, you can understand his frustration, understand his perhaps potentially blinkered point of view at that particular stage, that he just actually that wouldn't have entered his head, and he just wanted to get out of there as quickly as he possibly could. As you say, Nick, a €25,000 fine, 12,500 of which has been suspended. Bizarrely, however, that fine is only half of what Lewis Hamilton did. What Lewis Hamilton received when he did exactly the same thing in the Qatar Grand Prix. He was 50,000, 25,000 suspended, if I remember correctly. So they've both committed the same crime, yet one driver gets €50,000 fine, the other gets €25,000. Don't know whether the stewards had forgotten about that previous Lewis incident, and that resulted in Carlos only getting half of that punishment on that particular occasion. And then, as you say, Charles Leclerc, oh my word, Ferrari. Here was a guy that knew he had a car, certainly for the front row. Maybe not pole, unsure about that, but most definitely he was expecting second on the grid, and it just all went to pieces for him. Obviously, his teammates' crash meant that he didn't get in that initial banker lap during Q3, and then for his main run, they sent him out with the front tyres that were about 10 degrees too cold. What on earth had gone on inside Ferrari for that to happen? Well, you can only imagine Charles's comments afterwards. Really not a happy bunny indeed. The team are currently investigating as to what unfolded there. And again, we're going to likely get the explanation from Fred Vasseur when the media gets to speak to him after the race on Sunday. But yes, what an almighty disaster for Ferrari when they were expecting at least one car on the front row, and certainly the other one, maybe second row on the grid, at the very worst, third row.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shocker for Ferrari, and who knows what they can conjure up overnight in terms of setup for the race, because making any progress from there towards the top four is going to be very, very difficult. Ian, it leads us on beautifully to our bold predictions. I'll give you a few seconds because I want to get mine in first. I remember in the podcast on Monday, our co-host Sam Coop said that predicted Max would get a podium, and we kind of both looked at him in disbelief, like, what are you talking about? I'm going to go one step further. Based on Lando's recent start history, I think Max is going to win the Singapore Grand Prix. We know how tricky overtaking can be. McLaren, if Lando falls behind, Max will need to master their strategy. I just think the way this whole weekend has gone, I can just see Max winning, and it would result in another quite interesting press conference afterwards. So I'm going to go for a Max Verstappen victory in Singapore. What about you?
Yeah, you can imagine if Max Verstappen is in that top three post-race press conference, it's going to be packed out. It won't just be a gaggle of media in there, but pretty much be everybody who wants them to get in there to see just how Max is going to react and respond on that particular occasion. So that's going to be one to look out for, that's for sure. Pre-qualifying, I at least got half of my prediction correct. So I did say that both RBs would be ahead of both Red Bulls on the grid. 50% right. One RB was definitely ahead of a Red Bull Sonoda ahead of Checo Perez. The other RB, Daniel Ricciardo, I'll just give a quick nod to him as we've not mentioned him. Didn't even get out of Q1. And you got to feel, Nick, that if there was any semblance of hope that he was, given all this Ferrari, all this speculation about his future, that there's going to be an announcement post-Singapore Grand Prix as to what's going on with that second seat alongside Yuki Tsunoda for RB. As I say, if there was any semblance of hope, that has now completely been blown out the window, because not even able to escape Q1 when his teammate has managed to get into Q3 is pretty much, I think, that's the final nail in the coffin for Daniel Ricciardo in Formula One. As I say, we are expecting an announcement that Liam Lawson will be the driver most likely to continue for these final 6 Grand Prix, to give him that run-in, that bit of confidence, that understanding, building up with the team going into a 2025 full-time race seat contract. As for my predictions, nothing around Daniel Ricciardo on this occasion. I know what you hear, I know what you say about Max Verstappen, and yes, I did question the starts that Lando has had already this season. However, I've got a feeling that with regard to his title challenge, this is going to be make or break for him, and I do believe that he's going to answer the call, and I do believe he will go on to win that Grand Prix on Sunday.
I can't wait for Sunday. Bring it on. For those who've been watching this video, let us know your bold predictions in the comment section and any of your thoughts on the talking points we have discussed. And thank you once again for 10,000 subscribers. Here's to 15,000. From myself and Ian, this has been the latest episode of the Racing News 365 F1 update. We will see you after Sunday from Singapore. See you later.
And just as we conclude this video, it's just starting to rain again. So whatever rubber was laid down throughout today, it could all be washed away again overnight. We'll have to wait and see. But yes, thank you ever so much, folks. Keep watching, keep subscribing. We're ever so grateful for all your views, all your comments. So keep making those comments as well, because we do read them, of course, and we do try and answer your questions as well when you do post them. And as always, from me, from the Marina Bay Street Circuit on Saturday post-qualifying, an absolutely brilliant Saturday. Take care as always. Thank you.